Joining us now, the majority leader of the House of Delegates, supermajority leader, former extraordinaire basketball coach of all time at Manchester High School in Chesterfield, is from Colonial Heights, Kirk Cox. Majority Leader Cox, good to have you with us, man.
John, thanks as always. Love being with you.
All right, let's go to Speaker Howe retiring, announcing it on Monday. He had a very, I thought, moving speech to the House in the well and almost brought a tear to your eye. You know, those of us that work with him every day, that know him and know Ceci and know the boys and his family, you know, it's almost tough to imagine going there without seeing him with the gavel in hand in the well. And the thing that I just found amazing about him, Mr. Majority Leader, is whenever things got a little antsy or nasty, he'd always have that one-liner, that quip, that joke, if you will, to lighten things up. And his timing and delivery was always stellar. I think that's one of the things we're going to miss, is he has a great sense of humor, and he's able to keep things moving without ever feeling like stressed out, right? I mean, it's a unique aspect of his leadership.
It's a great point. I mean, he has the driest wit you've ever known, and he uses it to disarm people, and that's a tremendous quality. And he has this unique ability, John, to both have tremendous respect for the institution. So I do think that both sides of the aisle felt like he always put the institution first. But he was a movement conservative. I mean, he raised $25 million for Republican candidates. He did a lot of work, obviously, with ALEC and other conservative legislative groups, and really pushed, whether it be welfare reform or whether it be pension reform. The combination of being able to be true to your principles and also the dignity of the House is not easy. It's not easy to, sort of skirt that line. I thought he did a very good job. John, if I could, even on a personal level, we probably had 2 or 3 stories that were just very moving. I mean, Joseph Yost is one of my favorite young delegates, told a very moving story about, his wife and him finally were able to have a child, and they just, of course, were thrilled. But, they had 2, miscarriages, and how the speaker just really loved on him and, was there for him. And Dave Alba, who, when he adopted his child, the first person he talked to was Bill Howe. So that's the personal stuff of how I think connected he was with his members and how much he really cared about them. And Speaker can sort of stay up there on the high level and never get down there, and I don't think he did that at all.
No, I think he had a unique way of moving things forward. And look, you knew where he stood on any issue. That was the other thing about him. There was no milquetoast there. I mean, you know where he stood. He did it in a way that was not offensive or in your face. He didn't, if you went the other way, there was not a lot of retribution. I mean, he understood you had to vote your conscience sometimes. But I found his leadership to be steady. And remember, Mr. Majority Leader, when he took over, he took over after a crisis, right? Vance Wilkins, when that went down with
he did.
People forget it's not like he came in, he had a supermajority. I mean, he took over. The Speaker's office was a little bit tarnished over what happened. These things happen, and he had a majority, but it was small. And you look what he's done today; it's amazing.
Yeah, we're at 66. You make a great point. When he came in, he was chairman of the courts committee, but he was not in leadership. And it was interesting because there were a lot of people jockeying for position. I can remember like a 2-hour phone call. And everybody sort of said, well, this is the guy that, he's very steady, he's very ethical. And, of course, generally you turn to someone like that when you have a crisis. But to be frank, no one really knew what kind of leader he would be. And no one knew, whether or not, frankly, he could lead a speaker. And, boy, I mean, it was turned out for us to be a great choice. But at the time, basically you were taking someone sort of middle management and moving them all the way up to the top. And so, and it clearly was the right decision. But, boy, at the time it was, when you go back in time, it was much tougher decision. So very interesting.
I think his legacy is one of moving the state forward with a steady hand and doing it in a way that really what you guys call, I'm not from Virginia, but it's what you guys call the Virginia way. I think he was the epitome of that. Don't you agree?
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, and the Virginia way, to me really is, you're a gentleman, you treat people with respect. Doesn't mean that you got to have convictions in this job. If you don't believe in something, you'll never get anything done. And so, yeah, I mean, very much. I mean, just and I think the biggest thing he was always concerned about was this is the oldest legislative body in the New World, where, obviously our predecessor was the House of Burgesses, and he just had a sense of history that this is the place where democracy started, and that it was very, very important that he promote that integrity of that office. And that's not easy to do in this climate, as you know. He did a great job.
Well, and I also want to make mention, and I know we, obviously, our show backed this very enthusiastically, but when he did two things of note recently, he was the leader of the 2013 transportation compromise. That was not easy for him to do because a lot of conservatives were upset over it and they voted in opposition to it. But our infrastructure and road situation in the state and the Commonwealth was so bad, nobody would ever come up with the money. They kept kicking the can down the road. And finally, he showed the leadership to get that done. And look, I drove to Washington last night, and I'm finally seeing 64 getting expanded. I'm seeing extra lanes coming in as I'm going into Fredericksburg, and we had to do something, and that was not an easy decision for him to make, and I think he made the absolute right one. And I think as we improve the transportation system in Virginia, he's going to get the credit for that.
I don't disagree. He probably had 4 major transportation bills. He also had the bill that basically takes the politics out of deciding what transportation projects get picked. And I think what everyone forgets is when he did that, you're right, it was a very tough move. But throughout his career, he also supported a whole host of smart tax cuts. And sometimes when you support what happened in 2013, everybody loses sight of that. But, I think he felt like at that point, you stated it well, it was absolutely necessary. There was just no, in his mind, no other alternative at that point. And so, yeah, those are tough decisions.
Yes, and also his decision to not go forward with Medicaid expansion in the face of the new governor coming in and the problems we had in the state Senate at the time where, we were faced with a government shutdown and he would not move on that. And you look back at it now and the complete unraveling and death spiral and disaster of Obamacare. And you have to ask yourself, where would we be right now had he not been able to lead his caucus to stand up to McAuliffe on that?
Spot on. I mean, the pressure was immense. I mean, McAuliffe kept saying we'll be losing over $1 billion, and he was putting tremendous pressure. He held the budget up over it. I mean, if you're sort of down here in the cauldron, that was very difficult. We smartly did 3 or 4 test votes. We never lost more than 1 or 2 votes. I think everyone understood the resolve of the House. We did, to your point, we did town hall meetings all over the state. We did telephone town halls. We went out there and basically said, hey, this is why we think it doesn't work. We met with small businesses, et cetera, and we just didn't sort of stay down here. We took that message out to the people. And you're right, boy, you're talking about proven right. Can you imagine if we'd expanded Medicaid? And some of these states that did that, are just swamped right now and really looking at some pretty tough times. So just great leadership.
This is his legacy. These are the things that people are going to remember. Mr. Majority Leader, let's shift over now to legislation. What are you going to send, do you think, to the governor's desk that he is going to sign? Give me the top 3 things that you think you're going to send that will actually be signed and not vetoed by the governor.
Well, that's a tough one because I think that, obviously the Tebow bill he's already vetoed. There's some key welfare reform legislation, 2 bills we're still trying to get out of the Senate. I hope we can. One would basically say, obviously, if you're a lottery winner, you shouldn't be getting welfare. And the other one is, if you've lost your EBT card 4 times, you're going to be audited. I don't know. My guess is he'll veto those 2. Yeah, let me give you a few. I think there's in higher ed, I think there's a great online bill. We have a consortium between ODU and George Mason. We want to take that to the next level. where they're offering for the 1.1 million adults who started college have not completed one-stop shopping where they can go and get their degree. We're trying to pull in courses from all over the other public institutions in the state. Too long, our colleges have made our citizens fit their schedule, and this is an attempt to say, I'm a working mom. I like to go back and get my degree in this, and sort of putting the courses together for them that fits their schedule. That bill, I think, has a real good chance to come out. I can't imagine he would veto that bill. I think you're also going to see a really good bill on redoing financial aid and giving incentives to students as they go from their freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, actually rewarding them for moving up and giving more financial aid and not front-loading it as freshmen, and also really encouraging them to finish in 4 years to help with their debt. So I think that's a bill that's very good. And I think we've got some good initiatives in domestic violence to particularly try to fund some of the shelters, et cetera, in that area. That's a Republican initiative that, I can't imagine he would veto. And on the veteran side, John, we're trying to fix a really good program, the old Wounded Warrior program. It's the basically family support program it was a model first of any state to do a state Wounded Warrior program to try to help all veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. We're sort of redoing the way that program works, and I think we really have a much more effective way we can serve maybe 1,000 more veterans. So once again, I think that's going to go through. So there's some good stuff behind the scenes, but he'll obviously, he's been pretty aggressive on vetoes. So some of the high profile stuff, I think he'll veto.
Yeah, and the Tebow bill, he's already vetoed that. We knew that was going to come. You're not going to get that done until the day comes where you have a Republican governor. But look, we have divided government, and with a 21-19 majority in the House, you're not going to get anything overridden with in the Senate. I'm sorry, not the House. You're not going to get anything overridden there. So it is what it is. And, hopefully in 2018, it'll be a different situation. You'll have a Republican governor, and you're going to be able to get a lot of this stuff passed. Kirk, we were talking earlier. I'm a big advocate right now of congressmen, especially in Virginia, having town hall meetings. I think they should have them. I think Scott Taylor is writing the script. Let's do 3 in a row. Let's do them in all parts of the district. Let's have it in big venues and high schools where, hundreds of people can come, and if they want to bring signs, protest, throw tomatoes, jump up and down, tear up shirts or whatever they do, as long as it's legal, ask questions, scream and holler, have at it. I think that only buttresses Trump, because I think working people are looking at this stuff and they're saying, I just want a job. I don't want to get involved in this nonsense. And so I think it's actually going to backfire on them. But so I think he's got the script for it, and I commend him for that. What about members of the House of Delegates? Why not have town hall meetings? And if you want people to come and scream and holler, why is that bad?
I've never liked them, John. I think I don't know if I've done any. For this reason, I found that early on in my career, and I don't disagree with your point on the congressional level. I think this is a unique time. But if I had to give my members advice, I don't like them for this reason. Whenever I saw people do it on the same 20 or 30 people always showed up, and you spend 2 hours, and you have this recent phenomenon. I think you make a good point if that's your strategy. Is I like door to door. I will start door to door next week. You make the point all the time that we've got to listen to what that worker's saying, et cetera. I can't do that. They're not showing up to a town hall meeting. I'm not
right.
independents. I'm not different people.
Right.
But I'd much rather go talk to people one-on-one. I'm out there all the time. And I can really see what they're thinking. I just don't want to see what the protesters are thinking. So I understand your point, but I think to your point, you just can't hide in your office. I think you got to be out there. I can almost knock my district in a year. Not quite. And I go to different neighborhoods. And so I just think it's a more effective technique. I really feel like I can get the pulse of my district, and that's what I'm after more. So it's just a different technique. But I much prefer, if my member came and asked me what he should be doing, I go, you need to get out in the neighborhoods and let them know you're coming. I send a pre-piece out saying, I'm coming to your neighborhood in 2 weeks. So they all want to gear up and do whatever. But I like that technique better, always have.
Okay, well, that's the thing. But you're very unique, Mr. Majority Leader, in the fact that, even though you're in a Republican district, you're not going to endorse constantly. You have that app. You go after Democrats, independents. You want to hear specifically what they're saying, and that is not the normal modus operandi. So I applaud you for that. But it sounds like you're agreeing with me that the best thing that congressional members can do is have these meetings and do them in big venues and let the protesters come and get all mad and vent or do whatever. I just think hiding in your office or doing Facebook Live or phone is really nonsense. And I think if you do that, you just add fuel to the fire. Because if you think about the level of these protests, people can't go out night after night after. Eventually, they exhaust themselves. They can't do it. I mean, they have to do something else. And I think if you don't have them or you do it in a way that's kind of Weasley, and I'm not going to mention any names, but if you do it in a Weasley way, I think it just adds fuel to the fire. Look, the objective of protest is to influence policy. I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, Mr. Majority Leader. I grew up in the Vietnam era, and those protests at my college campus were real, and they were done for one reason, to affect policy on our status in the Vietnam War. These protests are not going to have any impact on Trump's policy at all, right? So it's just all to do about nothing. So to me, let them vent, and eventually they exhaust themselves. And for people that are going to work, they look at this and they're like, what? I just want to get a better job. I think it's going to blow up in their face.
Well, you make great points. It's interesting. You know, Colonel Bill Flanagan, who was my chief of staff for 22 years, he came to the Republican Party because of those Vietnam protests. So it's interesting. And so to your point, but I do think you need to know yourself, John. Scott Taylor's a tremendously talented guy. And so, you know, if you're, you know, and he is one of the most poised guys I know. To your point, you got to get out there. Now, whether that's the venue you pick, if that's not what you're really good at, I would suggest you make yourself, you know, go out there and knock doors. But, I mean, I do think you have to know yourself a little bit. If you're, you know, real short-tempered and that's not going to be a good venue for you, you got to be a little bit smart. But your point's right. You can't hide in your office. I don't care what you pick. And you can't pick something that's a little bit squirrely that people go, he's hiding. So you better be able to say to people, if I'm not using town halls, I'm using door-to-door, I'm doing something where you can really, you know, I'm directly contacting you. But I do think you got to go to your strengths a little bit, too. I don't think that's their thing. So that would be my take.
All right. And a good take that is. We are out of time. I want to thank Republican Majority Leader of the Supermajority House of Delegates, Kirk Cox, for being with us, Republican from Colonial Heights, and sharing his insight. And as always, Mr. Majority Leader, we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate your candor. Thanks for being with us, sir.